Ohio State is losing out to big-time recruits, and it's because of money. That should never happen. We're going to take a closer look at what's going on at Columbus, Ohio. Lockdown Big Ten starts right now.
You are Locked On Big Ten, your daily podcast on the Big Ten Conference. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Big Ten. I'm Craig Sheeman, 40 years as a sports talk show host and play-by-play announcer. I want to thank you for making us your first listen each and every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube, and we're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Hit that free subscribe button down below. That way you'll never miss a single episode. Plus, it helps us out a lot, as does if you share, like, and follow as well. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Football season is around the corner. Visit the FanDuel app today and start planning your futures bets now. Well, we have some good ones for you at the end with our Pigskin Picks segment. Plus, we're going to talk about Buckeyes, Bucks as in dollars. What's going on over there at Ohio State and the latest recruiting news around the country as well. But first, Ohio State's class of 2026 recruiting class shaping up to be the worst recruiting class since Ryan Day took over from Urban Meyer. I say the worst. All right, before we go any further, let's put this into perspective for everybody. The 2026 class is still going to be a top 10 class. All right, it's almost laughable. But it's pretty good, right? Most schools would kill to have a top 10 class. They'd trade places in a heartbeat, but not at Ohio State. At Ohio State, you usually have the top class. Top 2, top 3, bad year, top 5, right? They get whoever they want there at Ohio State. So anyway, this year, they might not even be a top 10 school. They're hovering right around there. So what's going on exactly? This day of paying players and paying them money, it's not a problem for this school. In fact, a year ago, Ryan Day delegated his play calling duties so that he could revamp the Buckeyes name, image, and likeness efforts and put together and maintain a $20 million payroll for his roster that won a national championship. It worked. So what's going on? It looked like they were the best at this whole name, image, and likeness and future revenue sharing. They had it figured out. They won a natty. They're good. What's going on? Lately, the Buckeyes have been getting outbid by Power 4 schools for recruits. I'll throw a couple out as an example. 5-star running back Savion, who we've talked about numerous times on this podcast. It looks like it's going down the wire between Michigan and Tennessee. And Ohio State's always been in the kids' top 4, but it never really seemed like they were in the mix. He'll announce in the next couple of days where he's going. Michigan feels good about its chances, but this kid is expected to command over $1 million a year. It's a flat-out bidding war. Again, why was Ohio State never really part of this all-out bidding war? There's also 5-star safety BRAYLAN Womack. All summer long, this kid was a done deal, going to commit to Ohio State. Now the vibe out there is he's going to commit to Auburn. What's going on? And how is Ohio State getting outbid by Michigan for Hyder? That's got to hurt twice as bad. You lose out on the kid, and it's to Michigan. So there are a couple of things at play here that I want to talk about. First, Ohio State is hesitant to go all in financially and overbid on a kid that probably won't play and contribute his freshman year. Freshmen typically don't play. Look, Jeremiah Smith, I get it. He's a unicorn. Guys like him don't come along. And we'll see about Bryce Underwood this year, a freshman that looks like he's ready to contribute. It's pretty rare. So you pay all this money and, millions of dollars, and the kid has to redshirt a year or whatever. So apparently that seems to be part of Ohio State's thinking here. They would like to continue to recruit kids at a high level, and make no mistake about it, they still are. They're still a top 10 class. But they want to spend their real dollars on maybe half a dozen at most transfer portal kids, bring them in, fill some gaps. They're veterans. They have experience. They know what to do. They can contribute right away. Will Howard at quarterback was a perfect example last year. Came in 1 year as 4 years of experience under his belt. And they won a national championship. Or maybe pay a guy a little more that's paid his dues to help you win some games along the way and maybe stay an extra year before going to the NFL. Jack Sawyer is an example. that comes to mind. So, look, there's nothing wrong with it, but I think that's part of what's going on. But there's another thing going on here that I think is worth exploring. We did a podcast about a month ago or so about how Ohio State was one of the few schools who were taking their name, image, and likeness efforts completely in-house. They want total control of the entire operation. In fact, they set up the Buckeye Sports Group is what they're called, but they work for the university. And that way, I think the theory here is that there's no outside name, image, and likeness collective influence. There's no lack of accountability because now the dollars have to be accounted for. Anything more than $600, it's got to be for a specific job. The days are gone where like, here's $1.5 million. You come play for us. No, if here's $1.5 million, you're going to have to be in these commercials and this photo shoot and this public appearance and do this job. And it's all being watched very closely by the higher ups coming out of the House settlement instead of the NCAA. So I think that's the reasoning behind all this. They want to keep everything tight and have accountability for every dollar and bring everything in-house. So this decision, look, this is the kind of thing that will cost them some big-time players. This is what's costing them the Hyder kid, for example, I think. This is why Michigan is able to outbid them because they're only going to go so far. Just keeping those dollars buttoned down. And this decision to bring name, image, and likeness in-house was 100% the doing of the new athletic director, Ross BJORK. It was his decision. He claims he wants Ohio State to be the forefront of how to pay players. And few, if any other Power Four schools are following his lead. He thought everybody else would be doing it this way. And it looks like Ohio State's pretty much on an island, the only one doing this way. Other schools still have outside name, image, and likeness collectives still working the money behind the scenes. And I think it's to the detriment of Ohio State. Look, I have no doubt whatsoever that Ryan Day is a little bit miffed about this. As I noted, he went all in on trying to create a monster program that won a national championship. And yeah, they paid $20 million for their roster and he got everything going financially behind the scenes, got the wheels moving, was able to keep kids in for another year and keep that roster together. And it worked. And then BJORK took over for athletic director Gene Smith, who had just retired, just as the world of name, image, and likeness and revenue sharing was going into high gear. And what coach wouldn't want to, continue to bring in 5 stars and add them to his roster? And in Ryan Day's case, what coach has pressure to win every single game? Look, all coaches have pressure to win, but let's be real. Everybody, Ohio State fans, they expect Ryan Day to win every single game, and he comes close. And Urban Meyer came close. That's the standard over there. It's unrealistic, although these guys have been doing a pretty good job. And both of those coaches I mentioned won national championships. And when you have that kind of pressure on you to win every day, sure, you want as many 5 stars as possible. And let alone the pressure of the Michigan game. And we didn't even talk about that. So right now, look, I have no doubt if you were to walk up to Ryan Day right now and ask him about this publicly, he would say all the right things. He would say how Ohio State is doing things the right way. Every cent is accounted for. Everything's buttoned up, and that they're going to be leaders at Ohio State. And, he'd rather pay players with some experience and sweat equity, the big dollars, there in his program. But underneath, he's got to be seething at the prospect of Ohio State losing out on players that he was normally able to land. And Buckeye fans are already very upset about all this. I think they're starting to get upset and grow a little angry with BJORK. They're going to blame him, not Day. And they're already upset with BJORK changing a handful of game day traditions at the stadium. They have one of the greatest home field advantages in all of college football, but one of the most difficult places to play. If you were the opposing team trying to march into the south end zone, it was impossible. You couldn't hear yourself think, let alone talk. And it's because you had the marching band there mixed in with the student section, and it was just nuts. Well, BJORK, one of the first things he just did, he's moving the marching band to the north end. And he's taking that area where everybody was, and he's putting field level suites, kind of like you see at SoFi in Los Angeles or Jerry's World in Dallas. But what kind of people don't make a lot of noise at games? Rich donors who are drinking wine and eating shrimp cocktail behind the end zone. So I think he's taking some of the home field advantage away with all this. They're also going to ring their victory bell before games instead of after a victory. I don't know. Is this because they lost a home game to Michigan and now that you couldn't ring the bell? Want to make sure we ring it in the pregame so you get to ring it that day? I don't know what's going on with that. I think it sends a bad message. Actually, it's a minor tradition, but it sends the wrong message. Bjork doesn't see it as changing traditions as much as he calls it traditions evolve for the new times. So look, maybe if Ohio State finishes with a recruiting class outside the top 10, we'll call it recruiting evolved because that's the direction they're going. Speaking of direction that we're going here, I want comments from you guys. Now, I know these comments today are going to go one of two ways. Because last time we talked about this, I got a lot of comments ripping me for just, I don't know, a lot of defensive Ohio State people were ripping me just because I was reporting the news about them bringing something in-house, and I'm dumb and I don't understand it. Then you'd range to text with the Ohio State people, talk about how Ohio State's a leader and all this, and watch everybody else follow. And then there's going to be a lot of upset Buckeye fans that are going to vent their frustrations over losing a couple of five-star players here. I expect to get more of those today than the other kind. But hit me up with the comments. Everything's fair game. Would love it if you'd hit that subscribe button as well. That way you'll never miss a single episode. And share, follow, and like Locked On Big Ten. Don't forget, we have a website, talkbig10.com. You can go there for all of our podcasts where they're archived, and there are links for you to buy Ohio State shirts, T-shirts, and hats, get you ready for the upcoming season. Plus, we have a lot of recruiting news, and we have our pigskin picks with a futures value attached to it today. All that's coming up as we continue in 1 minute right here on Locked On Big Ten. Wayfair. Love Wayfair. My wife and I shop there all the time. You know, summer's winding down. You got to get something nice for getting back to the routine that you love. Make yourself more organized in the house. Get that nice corner piece with drawers to put stuff in, decorations. Maybe you want to change out your quilting in your bedroom. Everything. They have it there. Bedding, linens, everything you could possibly think of at Wayfair. And like I said, my wife and I shop there all the time. And delivery is fast and free, no matter how big your order. There's a big piece of furniture or maybe an accent. And it's just convenient way to just find exactly what you need. You can't find it at all the brick and mortar stores. And it's just very, very simple, but very flashy. A lot of great stuff right there. Get organized, get refreshed, and back into a routine for way less. Head to wayfair.com right now and shop all things home. That's Wayfair, WAYFAIR.com. Wayfair, every style, every home. Thanks for making Locked On Big Ten your first listen each and every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts. And you everydayers out there, thank you very much. Be sure to subscribe, share, follow, and like Locked On Big Ten, your team every day. And check out our website, talkbig10.com. All right, let's talk about some more teams, more Ohio State stuff here. One 5-star that looked like they might get, looking good for the Buckeyes, class of 2027, defensive end Anthony Tank Sweeney. We mentioned him before. He's huge. He's 6'4", 230 pounds. He visited the Buckeyes for their spring game back in April and talked with Ryan Day this past weekend. So we keep it in touch. That's good. And I don't know if they're talking money yet, but he's going to be visiting the Buckeyes for their opener versus Texas in a matchup of the top 2 schools in the nation. So that looks like it's going well. Nebraska, their athletic director, Troy Dannon, he said something interesting. He was asked about the possibility of continuing the Colorado series, the non-con rivalry game. Sign me up for that. I love the last home and home, the last 2 years, Coach Prime, Dion, Colorado, Nebraska, Dylan Raiola, loved it. But the problem is, and it's a problem anywhere else. Danny said there are challenges in scheduling, and there always are, because these guys get locked into certain contracts and whatnot, and they've already got, they're booked. Nebraska is booked until 2032. They've got home and home series with Arizona, Oklahoma, and Oklahoma State, plus with the 9-conference Big Ten schedule, the 9-game schedule for the conference, which we all like. We all tell the SEC they need to get on board and do it. That's one less game you could schedule somebody like Colorado. So it sounds like Don't expect the Colorado-Nebraska rivalry to resume anytime soon. Yesterday's podcast, we talked about Michigan State. Go back and check it out. There were rumblings about Jimbo Fisher, Michigan State, Jonathan Smith. Feel free to check out yesterday's podcast for a second listen after this one. But as we were talking about the expectations for 2025, follow up on that, many, including Jonathan Smith, they're saying that this might be the best offensive line that Michigan State has had in years. Smith says they're still looking at like 10 guys through summer camp here. There's no starting 5 yet. So that can be good or bad, that they don't have guys that are stepping up as starters separating from the rest of the pack, or it means they're really deep. And they got 10 good guys, and maybe this is a nice problem to have. We'll see. We'll see. Illinois, banking on its momentum of its 10-win season last year with Brett Bielema and a top 12 preseason ranking. They're using that. They're opening doors. They're going after a 4-star wide receiver, class of 2027, Jabari Watkins. He recently pared his list down to 9. He had a whole bunch. Nebraska is the other Big Ten team, but Illinois is in the mix there. He's from Georgia. So Georgia wants him. Georgia Tech, A&M, Florida State are some of the others that our Big Ten schools are battling with. Big 6'2" wide receiver. Again, from the state of Georgia, 29th ranked wide receiver in the country. We'll see how that pans out. We'll keep an eye on him right here on Locked On Big Ten. How about a legal matter for you here? All right, so Indiana has a safety, Lewis Moore. He's bounced back and forth between Ole Miss and Indiana. He's 24 years old, and he's challenging the NCAA's 5-year eligibility rule, and he's actually been granted a temporary restraining order that allows him to practice with the Hoosiers for the next 14 days. He's been a starter at both Ole Miss and Indiana. He started games with both. His legal team is arguing that the 3 seasons that he played at Navarro Junior College in Texas should not count against his eligibility. There's been some similar classes or cases like this before where junior college eligibility doesn't count. Kids are getting extra years. So I'm thinking this is starting to look favorable for Moore and Indiana. Plus, he's claiming, look, if he loses out on this deal, he's losing out on some $400,000 worth of name, image, and likeness contracts as well. So looking for damages too, in addition to the right to play. And there'll be an injunction hearing on August 27th that will determine if Moore can play this season for Curt Cignetti and the Hoosiers. Let's talk about Michigan for a second. Clearly, quarterback was a problem for them last year. But now with Bryce Underwood and the Bryce Underwood era about to begin, and the fact that they have signed 4 top 10 quarterbacks, 4 classes in a row, what is it about? What's with their older quarterbacks that they got, were discarded? Remember Jaden Denigal? He just won the job at San Diego State. Just an update there. Good size, 6'5", 235 pounds from California. Transferred there in December after 3 years of not really cracking the lineup in Ann Arbor. And remember Alex Orji. He transferred to Nevada. He is still fighting for that starting job over there, playing for Coach Dan Mullen and Nevada. Now, I know we're all excited about the start of football season. Got a little basketball for you. And if you're a little older, you're good. You're going to like this. Remember Mateen Cleaves at Michigan State? I know Spartan fans knows that name. 25 years ago, he helped Tom Izzo win a natty, and we should all remember that because that's the last time the Big Ten won a national championship in basketball. How time flies. While Mateen Cleaves was there, he won 4 straight Big Ten titles, 3 straight Final Fours, if I remember correctly, but the national championship. And his son, Mateen Cleaves Jr., he just got offered by Tom Izzo. Does that make you feel old? Now, he's still a little young. This would be the class of 28, but he offered him. And if Izzo's still around, that would be Izzo's 38th year. I don't know if Izzo's still going to be around, although I do think he gets a kick out of coaching the sons of kids he's coached before because he's starting to do that more and more. And this Mateen Cleaves Jr. kid is 6'4", and already has another Big Ten offer from Rutgers. By the way, Mateen Cleaves Sr., what's he been up to? Well, he's with the Suns, and he's in the NBA, and he's a player developmental coach. And as you know, the Suns are owned by Cleaves' teammate from Michigan State back in the day, and billionaire Matt Ishbia. So that's the connection there. Anyway, throwing a little basketball here, closing out the week as we're just a couple of weeks from the start of football season. All right, coming up, we got our Pigskin Pick segment. We're going to focus on futures. I'll tell you why. All that is coming up in 1 minute. This is very exciting here on Locked On Big Ten. Mark your calendars for August 26th for FanDuel. It's FanDuel Futures Day. Get to bet on future bets and see what happens. All right, this is a lot of fun. It's a brand new holiday for FanDuel, for football fans. Make your live, bold predictions, your preseason hunches, put it on the table for a 24-hour period. FanDuel is giving you deals on NFL preseason predictions. So whether you're calling your MVP or eyeing your long shot division winner, maybe even naming your Super Bowl winner right now in August, before the season even kicks off, this is your chance to do so. You could look at your MVP, Super Bowl. I've got one. I'm going to share it for the next segment, so stay tuned for that on Defensive Player of the Year and Comeback Player of the Year. And we're going to look at that in just a second and tie all this together, part of our Pigskin Pick segment. Visit, though, the FanDuel app today and start planning your futures bets now, because Futures Day is one day only. FanDuel, play your game. All right, if you're new to our podcast, thank you. Welcome aboard. We're here every day, by the way. All 18 Big Ten teams, news, analysis of that news, and opinion. We do not shy away from opinion here, all under one umbrella, audio and video. We're the most unique Big Ten podcast in the world. So thank you for joining us. Now, another thing that makes us unique is at the end of the podcast each and every day, we have features, benchmark features every Monday. We do my top 10 Big Ten observations from the weekend. Tuesdays, we go to Twitter. We're at Twitter, at Talk Big Ten, by the way, X. And we do Tuesdays tweets. Wednesdays, we power rank stuff. Thursdays, we look at the Big Ten Network. We look at their lineup. We highlight some things you might be interested in the Big Ten Classics segment. And then Fridays are Pigskin Picks. Now, we don't have games to do yet, so that's coming. It's coming in a couple of weeks, and we'll do that every Friday right here. But right now, we're going to look at some futures bets in honor of the Futures Day at FanDuel. So I'll put this on screen. If you're audio only, I will describe this as best I can. It's pretty simple. First of all, futures bets to win the Big Ten. Now, we looked at this before, but I'll tell you where the real value is here, because we got Ohio State. Vegas says Ohio State's winning. It's interesting. We got the coaches poll that has Ohio State number 2 behind Texas. We've got the AP poll that says, no, it's Penn State, the number 2 team behind Texas. Well, here's what Vegas thinks about winning the Big Ten this year. Ohio State, the best at plus 190, Penn State at plus 240, and Oregon at plus 350. But for some value, $100 gets you $700 if you pick Michigan and they win the Big Ten. And it all seems it all will come down to how Bryce Underwood develops and how quickly he develops at quarterback. You know, he's put on 25 pounds of muscle since he showed up. He is serious and ready to go. You want some more? Sure. Why not? How about regular season win totals? All right. Indiana, take the over at 8.5. It's plus 110. Indiana, just like last year, they won 11 games. They have an easier non-conference schedule. They are only underdogs in 2 games this year. They do not have Ohio State, Michigan, or USC on the schedule. And their transfer quarterback from California, Fernando Mendoza, is said to be better than even Curtis Rourke was for the Hoosiers during their magical season last year. Okay. Washington, take the over at 7.5 at minus 110. I've talked about them all summer and spring. I think Washington's the team that jumps up this year and gets really interesting. This is Jed Fish's second year. They're not going to split time at quarterback with Will Rogers and Damon Williams Jr. It is Damon Williams Jr.'s show. I wondered many times last year why that kid wasn't starting every week. I think he's a tremendous athlete. He's going to be the breakout player of the year, I think. They got a steady running back in Jonah Coleman, big offensive lineman. Watch Washington this year. And then Michigan State, maybe take the under at 5.5. We talked about their prospects for 2025 in detail in yesterday's podcast. Go check it out. It's plus 125, under 5.5. My main point about Michigan State was not to say anything bad about them. It was, I really do think they're going to be improved, but they may be improved, but it might not show up in their win total. They were 5-7 last year and got a tough schedule. Their road schedule this year at USC, at Nebraska, at Indiana, at Iowa. That's tough. And they still got Michigan and Penn State, although they're at home. Those are tough ones. Getting above 5 wins is going to be tough this year for Michigan State. All depends on how much improvement we see out of Aiden Childs at quarterback. So right now, the under is the play there, plus 125, 5.5 games. And then a game to watch, back to Washington. Right now, it was 14. Right now, plus 13.5 underdogs at Ohio State. I think it's going to be a close game. I think it's going to be a really good game. So based on the reasons I just talked about, Washington being improved, Ohio State's going to be great. They're going to be that quarterback battle. Julian Sayin and Damon Williams, 2 youngsters coming in, getting their chance. That's going to be a great game. And then finally, something else to watch, and this ties back to our FanDuel Futures Day, NFL picks and MVPs and Super Bowls. Here's one. This is a stone cold lock, and his former Michigan player. Defensive end Aiden Hutchinson, now with the Detroit Lions. Gruesome leg injury last year. He's back. Reports are he is better than ever at camp. The leg is good. He says bodies are landing on him. He's getting kicked. No problem. Doesn't even think about the leg anymore. You know, he was leading the NFL in sacks before he went down last year. So I say comeback player of the year, good money at plus 300. Defensive player of the year, $100 gets you 700. And then if you really want to go all in, NFL MVP, I know defensive players don't win the MVP award very often in the NFL, but he is at plus 25,000. Just throwing that in there. Thank you to our friends at FanDuel for all of that. All right, let me know what you think. Hit me up in the comment section. We're ready for a big weekend, kind of the quiet before the storm, a couple more weekends, and then we're into college football. We're going to be doing our live shows on Saturday nights and all that kind of good stuff. So get ready for all of that. For the latest news, analysis, and opinion, right here, one place, Locked On Big Ten. Hit that subscribe button down below. That would be great. As you see, we got over 20,000. We're pushing to 21,000 now. It's incredible. You guys are great. Thank you for that. Plus, share, follow, and like Locked On Big Ten. Go back and check out a second listen if you missed one earlier this week. And another option for a second listen, our friend Brian Smith at the Portal Show. All things transfer portal. Kids are still transferring. I mean, if they're in the portal, they can transfer whenever if they haven't found a team yet. He's on top of all of it. So check that out on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast. Have yourself a wonderful weekend, and I can't wait till we meet again on Monday with all the latest Big Ten news. For Locked On Big Ten, I'm Craig Sheeman. We'll see you then.